We are live, everybody. Welcome to the Café Hangout.
I'm John Pollock alongside Wai Ting. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the new, the improved, the inimitable Café Hangout. I am John Pollock with Wai Ting, as I have now said twice, because you know what? The double shot is gone, but that doesn't mean that we love double of everything. We're going to have double the calls, double the patrons, double the shows to discuss, and double the technical problems, maybe. We hope not.
Let's not jinx ourselves, but yeah, that is always to be expected. Already a record number of patrons in the cafe this week, so thank you everybody for joining us right on the dot at 3 p.m. No late start for us today because we have a lot to get to.
Yes, I think that war has been declared. And the Café Hangout is coming for you, NXT UK, because they are going head-to-head with us. But you know what? Bring it. Bring it.
Bring it, NXT UK.
We are ready. So I hope we don't contribute to Benno's trademark term. Britt Rez is dead. I don't want us to kill off NXT UK because they're going against a juggernaut with you and I. Lots to talk about today. Obviously, we're going to be discussing all of the fallout of Wednesday night's insanity between AEW's premiere episode of Dynamite, NXT's first full 2-hour episode on the USA Network that Wai and I have both now had the opportunity to watch. We're also going to be going through all of the news from today, and joining us to chat about the news will be Andrew Thompson, someone that's, you may be familiar with his work previously with sites like Fightful, and has now been doing updates on our site throughout the week. He's going to join us. He was also in attendance at the Capital One Center on Wednesday night for the AEW debut. We'll get his thoughts on the show from a live perspective. The ratings will be coming out, and we will stay on the air until those come out, and everyone can go absolutely insane about what the week one numbers mean, and we will just throw the fish into the sea of sharks for everybody to devour.
The gasoline into the fire.
That is a great analogy.
Yeah.
So that will be coming out later. I also had a chance to go through Tony Khan's scrum after the first episode, and I want to start off with this because this was, of the predictions of what was going to happen today, a WWE press release with a statement about AEW's debut was not on my list of things to expect.
I haven't seen this yet. I'd love to know what it says.
This is the statement that was sent out by the WWE.
What, to like press? To emails?
Yes, to press.
Okay.
Did not make its way to post-wrestling, which I don't know. We're not, I guess, on...
A press release just seemingly kind of out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere, and it almost... we can dissect further, but here's the statement. Congratulations to AEW on a successful premiere. The real winners of last night's head-to-head telecast of NXT on USA Network and AEW on TNT are the fans, who can expect Wednesday nights to be a competitive and wild ride, as this is a marathon, not a one-night sprint.
Wow.
Now, if that does not read as a preeminent statement before, like, they have to believe we did not attract the viewership that AEW did. Mm-hmm. And this just sounds like a very conciliatory statement, knowing that the week one number is going to come out and AEW is going to be the clear winner.
Now, do you think this was a good move? Knowing that, if these results are to be true, and we will find out at the end of this the broadcast, was this a good move to save face? Or was it necessary?
I think that it's very transparent. That is what I see from here. And I would say that, tonight, I think they're going to get tons of like real press that is going to want a reaction to these numbers. And this will be the default statement that goes out.
Sure.
And that this is, as they say, the fact at the end, this is a marathon, not a one night sprint.
Yep.
I mean, I
think that's true.
It is true. It is true. Like ultimately this week one number. And I believe when we get these numbers, I certainly felt a difference in AEW with the promotion they received in the final hours leading up on that day. I mean, even a little thing like Todd Martin writing that piece for the LA Times and that being the most read piece on the LA Times website. Mm-hmm. That is, I think that tells you. And just the people I heard from that were just either lapsed fans or like outside the wrestling world, like AEW had a lot of interest. Mm-hmm. And I think that we're going to get a really big number from AEW. I don't know how big, but I'm certainly much higher on AEW's number that I'm expecting we're going to get in about an hour's time.
Yeah, certainly. But, again, I think it's important to realize whatever the number is this week, I feel like we need to add an asterisk to both shows. One, with AEW, of course, being the first show, eliciting a great deal of interest. But also, I don't expect the type of NXT show that we just saw to be every single week. This was a show that they loaded up and made very special to try to counteract. What will be really interesting once these numbers come out is looking back and assessing NXT steps in the 3 weeks leading up to this to perhaps, try to counter this specific number. Were they effective? Could they have done something differently? Did it work against them to go ahead 2 weeks earlier?
I think that ultimately it's going to come out that I don't think the 2 weeks ultimately is going to, and it's hard. We haven't seen the numbers yet, but I don't think that the 2 weeks, it established a good audience for NXT, but I think people ultimately, the curiosity factor for a new company that was going to do something different, there was no way you were going to override that. And that would have been the same case if NXT had not gone on 2 weeks earlier. So ultimately, I don't think it mattered. I think that there was still going to be this big audience for AEW. The question now is, how big is this number? And WWE clearly has to be looking, Dave Meltzer had a thing on some overnight numbers in 8 different markets, and they're looking pretty good for AEW. So WWE has to be, they're bracing for what this number is going to be and realistically what NXT is going to be. And also breaking it down, like there will be the overall viewership number. Then we have the demo breakdowns. This is all important stuff. And man, was it refreshing that, I catch a lot of flack for the emphasis I put on television numbers and when I write about them and stuff. And
who gives you that flack? Really?
Oh, believe me, there are people, television ratings don't matter.
It's all that matters.
Tony Khan literally said in his post-media scrum, the most important thing is the number tomorrow for our broadcast partner, TNT. And also, it was also very interesting and somewhat refreshing to hear him say, when someone brought up that you guys were trending all night, that he believes there is not a whole lot of correlation between trending on Twitter and Nielsen numbers. Right. So, I mean, that's, something that, we kind of look at, like, what does that ultimately mean? And it seems that he is someone that, like, Tony Khan is a numbers guy. Like, he has a data management company that specifically breaks down all of this stuff. And it is like, there is the real numbers, the numbers that tell you a lot, and then there's the bullshit stats. And I think that he probably has a very clear indication of what's what.
So on the show, we have Andrew to get to in about 10 minutes time. But before that, shall we get into some calls? You want to get into some of our thoughts on NXT?
Let's talk about NXT first.
Okay.
So you and I both had a chance to watch the show. And I guess, first of all, just overall thoughts on what they presented.
Overall, I felt like it was a really excellent show. On paper, this looked like it was a TakeOver quality card. Near TakeOver, I would say, on paper. And execution, I would say, I think it definitely lived up to that. Not quite at a TakeOver level, but I think very close to it. Good surprise returns, good setup for future programs. I was really impressed with the video packages, and this is where I feel like NXT really had the advantage over AEW, where for whatever reason, we've seen those great road twos, but on the actual body of Dynamite, we only got to see one video package, whereas NXT had very well laid out video packages for all their main events, or at least, the Shayna match and also the Undisputed Era match, and also, great introduction to somebody like a Tegan Nox, immediately in like 30 seconds told you exactly what you needed to know about that particular character. So, and also in ring, NXT definitely took the edge. I thought between the 3 title matches on the show, really good wrestling on the show. NXT wins. They put their best effort into producing a major event to counter the competition. I felt AEW, on the other hand, felt like it was staying the course, going slow and steady. And, if to make another analogy, like this would be, I think, a bit of a case of the turtle versus the hare, with NXT being the hare, going full speed to making sure, that they get as much as possible out of this first airing. Whereas AEW, I think their show was very much just going by their original game plan, not necessarily being as reactionary and not really throwing everything into that first attempt.
And NXT put out like a huge, pay-per-view caliber show. I thought that Adam Cole versus Matt Riddle was fantastic. I thought the tag title match was tremendous. I really got into the drama of Shayna Baszler and Candice LeRae. And I also like the, quote unquote, like shorter matches. Like the shortest match was just under 8 minutes. Like everything got
short, with the caveat of with the commercial breaks in between too. And
that
was something we should talk about as well, because despite the picture-in-picture, I mean, they went half an hour commercial free for the first 30 minutes. But unfortunately, that kind of resulted in the rest of the show having maybe more commercials than typical. And I thought it was really noticeable in the Shayna versus Candice LeRae match, where there were moments in the match that looked like they were climaxing and peaking for like big reactions. But unfortunately, we couldn't hear. But you can argue whether or not that was a smart tactic.
I would say watching it back, obviously the picture-in-picture, it's designed for the live experience so that you're not flipping the channel. I'm watching it the day after, and I'm watching it. To me, it took me out of the match as much of a full-on commercial break.
Yes,
like those picture-in-pictures. So I don't think it didn't keep me any more captivated than if they had just completely gone to break and come back. So in that sense, if you're talking, and also it's going to be interesting what kind of version we get on the network tomorrow night. I presume it's just going to be the commentary continued through the break, and we're just going to get the whole thing, don't you think?
I'm really not sure.
Or are we going to get a gap?
I'm really not sure. I mean, I haven't seen their versions of SmackDown. So people, if you've seen TV shows where WWE has produced that have picture-in-picture, typically what they look like in broadcast,
because we don't get the picture-in-picture in Canada.
Yeah, so I'm kind of curious to see that.
So, other things, I think that they had the surprises in place with Finn Balor, which I understand it had kind of been in the planning for a while now, and then Tommaso Ciampa coming out at the end. So you were left with some big matches to go to. It wasn't like they just blew everything and had nothing to come back with. They've kind of teased you. I think that you could do something in the interim with what do you think about Finn Balor on NXT?
I think it freshens up the main event mix. Certainly adds a good deal of star power by far. Now probably the biggest star on the show. Freshens things up, and I think Finn Balor, probably not as big of a difference maker on either Raw or SmackDown these days. So putting him in NXT is a really good move.
Yeah. I hope they hold off on Ciampa for a bit. Like that should be a long term.
Is he even ready?
I don't know if he's officially been cleared,
right?
But obviously, if they're putting him on TV, they've got to believe that it's soon at least. But I don't know for sure.
I wanted to ask you, how do you think ratings patterns? And we haven't really seen him yet, but can you predict? The fact that NXT put Cole versus Riddle up very first with the half-hour block without commercials. Do you think that was the right call versus perhaps saving it for the main event going up against Kenny and the Bucks and Jericho, commercial free?
You know what? If I was putting that show together, I didn't think it was a bad way to start, because if I was just all things being equal, I think I would have just started and watched the first 20 plus minutes of Cole and Riddle,
right? Because
that was the match.
Even with the curiosity of knowing what the TV show looked like, the staging, the lighting, and all that stuff.
Yeah, that's what you were countering. To me, match versus match, it was clear which one I would be more interested in. But you're right; it was like the feel and just the presentation, which I think appeals to a larger amount of people than just match to match.
That almost had more of my interest than any particular match on that AEW show, was what this show was going to feel like, how the commentary team was going to sound. And commentary team, I felt both teams were really good. Mauro, Nigel, and Beth obviously have the longer chemistry between the two. They felt like a really well-oiled machine, really smooth, really just kind of like, tight, I would say. Whereas I think JR, Shivani, and Excalibur also sounded really good, but I think they bring something different in that, there's a great deal of nostalgia and I think familiarity with JR and Tony's voice, especially being on TNT. So I would say both teams really sounded really good. It's certainly better than anything on Monday.
Well, I think, Mauro, like you certainly heard, like, here's a guy that in the season of pumpkin spice where there are leaves being placed in bags, he did not want to be the fall guy. He delivered that much better than I did, but I was just like, the ability to be able to just get a line like that out there was something else.
Yes. Any other thoughts on the show?
I liked NXT as, I thought both were really strong shows, to be honest, but I think that it's a lot's going to be put into the number. Which would you say did the better job of bringing you back for week 2? We got the announcements of Drew Gulak, Leo Rush with the rebranded NXT Cruiserweight title, and Kushida, Walter, and conversely, Jon Moxley, Shawn Spears, that they really didn't hit on at all during the show, and Private Party, the Young Bucks, which I didn't think they really hit you a lot. It was AEW. It's like, here's the new toy. We hope you want to play with it again next week.
I feel like both shows, because they, especially NXT felt like it was such a climax, it would be hard to, get you to bring you back with something that felt equal. So as much as I love Walter, as much as I like Drew Gulak, you can't help but feel like week 2 is going to be a big step down from what they presented this week. But nonetheless, I'm going to tune into that Walter match. I love Walter, and it's Walter versus Kushida. I'm still really curious to see what AEW has in store because we've only seen 2 hours of it so far. I haven't seen how they're planning on presenting so many of the other talents, such as your Private Party, Jurassic Express, Joey Janela. We haven't seen a lot of that. We haven't really seen a lot of their backstage elements either. So I still have a great deal of curiosity to see what AEW is about to present. I'll be just as interested, I would say, next week.
Just before we go to Andrew, Tony Khan did do his post-show scrum with members of the media. So some highlights here was, going over how important the rating is on Thursday. Some of the storylines coming out of this was the idea that Earl Hebner blew the finish when Pac low-blowed Hangman Page that they're going to play up, and Hangman Page was already doing on Twitter. So that was part of the story.
He blew the finish.
That he didn't see the low blow by Pac.
Okay. Yeah.
He mentioned Jake Hager had been signed for a long time, even before All Out, and they were able to keep it quiet.
Okay.
He said he referred to Jericho, Santana, Ortiz, Guevara, and Hager as a stable together that they're going to be moving forward to. I mentioned the thing about Twitter and Nielsen correlation, and he was much more optimistic, taking the statistic from the Countdown special the night before that did 631,000 viewers. In addition to that, there was this big discussion on which wrestlers are insured or not, and this was clearly a topic that I don't think Tony Khan wanted to get into. He was kind of had his back up against discussing this and saying that most of the wrestlers you have seen do work full-time with the company and have full-time benefits. Stated that Jon Moxley does have health care because this question came out of the Death Rider spot through the glass and asking about who is insured and how are they insured. And he said that Moxley has health care through his wife that works full-time for another company.
Really? He said,
yeah,
oh my God.
He did not feel prepared for this answer, and he
doesn't have health care, but our competition is paying for his health care, basically.
Basically what he said. Yeah.
Damn.
He's not sure if it's going to be an immediate replay every week because that's what they did on Thursday, where 10 p.m. TNT immediately replayed Dynamite afterwards. Okay. So that's going to be another interesting audience too.
I've also been made aware, at least in the U.S., it's available on their website. I believe TNTdrama.com. And TNT has been known to do this for their new series for the first couple weeks.
And ITV Hub has mentioned that they've had some delays, and I think it's going to be up later than 7 p.m. In the UK today. Huh. So said the dark matches they taped will probably air somewhere, and hinted that they would be free online somewhere. When there was a recent interview with a TNT executive about doing a studio show, he said that could be more like a behind-the-scenes style show and was open to that possibility. Wouldn't really commit if they're going to lean in or not on politics after the We the People chant, because WWE is so against doing anything political. It was brought up, Andrew Yang tweeting them ahead of it. He could not speak more about any interplay with New Japan, but he did not dismiss the Justin Barrasso's report about Chris Jericho and Hiroshi Tanahashi at Wrestle Kingdom. So it seemed like he did not refute that. Would love to do some cross-promotion with Glow on Netflix. He did go out of his way to explain why the cameras were in the locker room, and Jim Ross did explain we were eavesdropping in on them, and that was explained. He is very big on this non-invisible camera.
So that means it's okay? So the camera is there without Jericho knowing? Was that the explanation?
It felt like they were trying to explain something that
too much thought I think they're putting into this.
The camera could have just been on them, but they made it much more complicated. It just seemed like two different pages of thought. Confirmed Ross, Shivani, Excalibur, they are the team on TNT. However, Shivani will not be available for Full Gear because of other sports commitments. Golden Boy will be on the broadcast. Okay. And he kind of pulled back on the idea of going the Kenny Omega, Nyla Rose route, with the shove, and kind of indicating that was not supposed to happen. Omega was out there defending his protege, but they were asking about doing an intergender match on TV, and he seemed to be that's not where we're going.
So Kenny was asking about it?
No, this was someone. One of the reporters asked about an intergender.
I mean, the fact that they even went ahead with it on their TV, and Tony, right afterwards saying that wasn't supposed to happen. I don't think that's a really good sign of everybody being on the same page.
It seems that it was the way I took it, and he didn't spell this out, was more so that he was just shielding Riho, but the shove,
but immediately
left everyone that was my impression was, wow, they're going to do Kenny Omega and Nyla.
Any wrestling fan would have thought that.
Yeah. So anyway, those were the notes. It's about 35 minutes there, and we'll see if he continues to do these each week.
I think we have Andrew on the line right now. Is this Andrew Thompson, and are you on the line?
Yep, John and Wade, how y'all doing?
How are you, Andrew? It's good to have you on the show.
Hey, I can hear y'all.
It's our
Glad to be here, man.
It's our first time talking to you, and immediately I want to thank you so much for all the great work you've been doing on our site over the past month. Was Wednesdays and Thursdays, Andrew does our daily news updates. They are incredibly comprehensive and a much needed break for John Pollock on those separate days so that he could do stuff like this.
Andrew's the transcription machine. He's just a machine in general. And coming off of a Wednesday night, Andrew, I know you got to go to the Capital One Center itself, and I'm really curious to get some of your thoughts because we've got to talk about it from the television presentation, but take us into the arena and what kind of the vibe was live there.
I say, first and foremost, I do want to thank you guys for the opportunity to write for you. It's been great so far. You guys do nothing but support me, so I just wanted to throw that out there. And inside the arena, it was really jam-packed. Like, it was really loud in there. But I don't know how that came off on TV, but it was definitely how exactly it came off or how you think it would come off. There was a lot of rowdy fans in there. A lot of people were excited, obviously. And I felt like after the Brandon Cutler MJF match, the crowd the energy in the arena sort of went down a little bit. But when Nyla Rose and Rio had their match, that's when they came right back alive.
Now, Andrew, because I know it wasn't just Dynamite that was done, but several dark matches. What time did everything get started by the time you got into the arena?
Okay, so on the actual ticket for the show, they advertised the dark match to start at 7:30. The pre-show dark match, and that started exactly at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. And it was Darby Allin and Shima.
Yep.
And Darby Allin defeated Shima with the coffin drop. And for the post-show dark match, the first one was the Lucha Brothers. They teamed with Angelico and Jack Evans, and they defeated Best Friends and Private Party. And Orange Cassidy came out with Best Friends, and people immediately knew who Orange Cassidy was. Like, it wasn't that, that period, but people, kind of wondering, like, there's sounds in the arena, people wondering who this guy is. Everybody knew who Orange Cassidy was, and they popped for him like crazy.
And I'm assuming everybody stuck around until the end?
For most part, like, it wasn't, like, completely full. I'm not going to sit there and say it was completely, because it wasn't. Like, some people left, but for the most part, it was generally full.
Did you get a sense as to, how many casual fans were perhaps sampling AEW for the first time? I mean, it's probably really tough to tell amongst, like, a sea of 14,000, but if you could, just maybe through your daily, like, regular interactions, walking through the crowds or something.
I would mostly say it was more fans that know, like, who or what AEW is, because I remember doing a commercial break. I don't know if you guys, I don't know if it was on commercial break, but before the main event, Nick Jackson got on the microphone. It was him, Kenny Omega, and Matt Jackson in the ring, and he started, like, talking to the fans and, like, hyping everything up, and, like, it was just like a sea of people just chanting AEW. So I'm like, I'm pretty sure this is like a crowd full of people that know what this is and they know what's going on.
What did you think about the couple days leading up, Andrew, in terms of which show kind of had, the lion's share of the attention? Because I think going into this week, like, it really hit me certainly on the Wednesday, like, just how big AEW felt to a lot of people that were maybe lapsed fans that were coming back, and, like, they certainly had the big curiosity factor, which was always going to be their advantage going into this first head-to-head night.
I say, you want to know what's crazy about that? The guy that I was sitting next to, it was another guy along with my friends who were there too. I was sitting next to another guy. He told me that he was a lapsed fan, and AEW brought him back into the mix of professional wrestling. So that was, like, real cool to hear. And I was just chatting with him about like, what specifically about AEW made him want to come back, and he was just like, it's the whole, just the new factor of having a new wrestling company out there, and that was, like, the gist of that. So I kind of feel like out of between NXT and AEW, who had the most hype coming into this week, I would say AEW, because people were curious to see how they were going to present their product on TNT with commercial breaks and all that good stuff.
What would you say were some of the stand-up moments from being there live? Some
of the stand-up moments, definitely one was when was when the guy threw the hot dog in the ring.
Right, with
and
Jericho.
Chris Jericho, like, yeah, and like I know they pushed that out on social media. Like I like how they didn't like try to act like that didn't happen. Like they publicized it and made it a big thing. And Jericho hopped on the mic during a commercial break and addressed it. One of the highlights wasn't even on TV. It was when Luchasaurus competed. They offered 3 dark matches after the show went off the air. And when I tell y'all that as soon as Jack Swagger, Santana Ortiz, Jericho, and Guevara, once they left the stage, and Justin Roberts got in the ring, and he said before the show that we were going to have dark matches, but he brought it up again after the show. As soon as he finished those dark matches, people immediately started chanting for Luchasaurus, like
wow,
immediately. And he was the last. Him, Marco Stunt, and Jungle Boy were the last dark match, but people were going crazy for Luchasaurus. Like it's amazing to me, like this guy, like he's literally like wearing a dinosaur mask, and like people are so like intrigued with what he does. It's crazy, man. Like Luchasaurus got one of the biggest reactions of the night, and it wasn't even on TV. But Tony Khan did confirm, though I saw one of the post-media scrums on YouTube, and Tony Khan did confirm that some of those most of the dark matches are going to be available to watch online for free. Commentary team was out there too, so doing the dark matches.
I'm also curious, coming from you, Andrew, who like a lot of us, like we lived through WWF and WCW, and then 2001 happens, and all of that comes to an end. You're a lot younger, so when you hear about the Monday Night War, is that something that you have of the context at the time for you? I mean, were you following wrestling at all at that point, or is that like much before your time as a fan?
Yeah, I knew about the Monday Night Wars, but I wasn't as aware. I remember I used to sit down and like I would watch the shows with my older cousin, and like he would flip back between WCW and WWF, and I was like, I didn't know what was going on. I was just like, oh, this, guys. I knew it was wrestling. I just didn't understand like what exactly was going on until I got older and started getting into wrestling media and whatnot. But I mean, I know people want to peg it as a war, and some people don't, but it's competition, and it's good for the business overall, and it's good for wrestling media overall that we got so many different outlets. And I think that with something like it is open. You see how Triple H, how he welcomed the media to the Performance Center yesterday, and how WWE they really didn't allow access to the the nucleus of the wrestling media to interview their talents. But now with AEW coming along, that access has become more available. So I think it's good for everybody.
Were there, noticeable slow points at all during the live experience? How were commercial breaks handled for the most part? What was all that like?
For the most part, the slow parts came from the MJF Brandon Cutler match. I know I talked to some people in the area that I was sitting in, like they kind of felt like the match ended very quickly, and they weren't really pleased with that. I guess that's from what I took. And the Pac and Hangman Page match, I know that I know a lot of people like in this particular section I was sitting in was very excited to see that, and they thought it was going to be more than what it actually was. But it was still a good match. But I thought that they would want to go out, go to the wall with it. And then once, like I said before, Nyla Rose and Rio came on, and they got into the gist of their match. That's when the crowd started coming alive again. But from that portion, from MJF to Nyla Rose versus Rio, like the crowd was, the energy was kind of flat in the arena. That's just how I took it.
Before we wrap up here, Andrew, I just wanted to ask you a few news items. On Wednesday, you went through that whole CM Punk interview that he did with Collider, and just listening to that entire interview, what were just some of your own personal takeaways of where CM Punk is right now in terms of his career, and confirming this recent audition for the Backstage show?
Honestly, to be honest, I think he's taking the job. I really do. I think he's going to take that job for WWE Backstage or FS1. I don't know Punk personally, so I can't really speak to this, but just from what I take and just from dealing with people and daily interactions and stuff like that, CM Punk doesn't want to come off like he's what's the word, like he's pressed, like he doesn't want to seem like he's too enthusiastic about the job, but he probably is going to take the job, like just to seem nonchalant about the whole situation because of the whole thing with him and WWE. And I heard you guys before you brought me on how you talked about Punk saying that he was only dealing with people from Fox and he wasn't dealing with people at WWE, and made that very clear. So I really do think CM Punk is going to end up being on WWE Backstage, because he did mention that he loves Renee Young and loves working with Renee Young, and then he commented on the whole Booker T thing, said he's always had a great relationship with Booker. So, I really don't see no reason why CM Punk shouldn't be on WWE Backstage, but I guess we'll see. And there's something going to be in the news update today that Nick Jackson, he did an interview with the New York Post, and he said what the reporter asked him what was going on with the CM Punk situation, amid the FS1 rumors and stuff like that. And Nick Jackson said the ship has sailed on that one, and that's all he said. So,
Interesting.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It seems like the ball really seems to be in Punk's court, and I think that most people see that this is really him just kind of setting it up for him to segue into a professional wrestling role in 2019, and I think that it seems like that's where things are trending. Anything else you want to tease for the update that's coming up later today, including what'll be the most analyzed and scrutinized television viewership figures of the year?
Oh my goodness, I'm telling you, it's going to be crazy on social media when those ratings come out. But I know you guys. Did you guys get the statement that WWE sent out about AEW?
Yes. What did you make of that,
Yeah,
Andrew?
So I think that AEW got the higher rating. Like that's kind of what I take of it. I mean, it could be WWE just sending a congratulations on your show, but
that really did sound like a preemptive. We know where things are going to be landing in a couple of hours' time.
Definitely. Oh yeah, there was another dark match that happened after the 8-man tag. It was Britt Baker. She teamed with Allie, and they defeated Penelope Ford and Bea Priestley. And they played the whole thing with Bea. She gave Britt Baker the concussion at Fight for the Fall, and Britt Baker did this new fin. I think it was a new finisher. She put Penelope Ford in a Rings of Saturn maneuver, but pulled on her teeth. It was crazy. That was a nice little move, in the crowd, reacting good to that, because everybody knows Britt Baker's intensive and stuff like
so
that.
She can fix the teeth after. She's just trying to add to her business. Yeah. All right. Cool.
Well, Andrew, we very much look forward, as always, to your extensive updates. Anything else you want to mention? Where people can follow you on Twitter? Anything else you want to get out there?
You can follow me at AD Thompson on Twitter, and you can catch all of my work on Post Wrestling. And just a little sneak peek, I might have an interview to drop next Tuesday, so that's gonna be cool.
The art of the tease. Andrew Thompson has it down. We will definitely have you on many more times here on the Hangout, Andrew. You're doing fantastic work. It's great to have you on board, and thanks a lot for jumping on with us today.
All right, I'll talk to you guys later, man. Thank you again.
Awesome.
Thanks, Andrew.
That was great. So yeah, check that out. Andrew always has great stuff, and as I said, the transcription, it's the bane of my existence is transcribing, and this guy, a machine.
Shall we go to some phone calls?
Yeah, let's dive into the calls. We have some time before this number comes out, so I definitely want to hear from people, whether you saw both shows, one show, either show, and also what is going to be your typical viewing schedule for Wednesdays moving forward? Because I think for a lot of people, it's going to be a tough ask to expect people to watch 2 shows every week. Are you going to be flipping, or are you going to just pick one or the other depending on the week?
I want to give some shout outs here to the chat room, which is I want to say the Café is at capacity. We're breaking our fire code.
SRO in the Café.
We're breaking our fire code in order to facilitate everybody being here. But hello to Miles G, Philip Jerriman, Daniel Perry, Brandon D, Brandon Gallagher. More Brendans. I think we're going to make a Brendan wing of the Post Wrestling Cafe. But I want to say a special thank you, hello to a regular caller of the show, Hansi. Hansi, what's up?
Yeah, what's going on, guys? How are you?
Very well, very well. What did
it
you
wouldn't
watch?
It wouldn't be the brand new Cafe Hangout unless we had the man, the myth, the Hansi himself.
He's our norm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was saying in the chat, with all these new guys coming in, I'm worried me, Brandon, and Paul from New Jersey got to put over the new guys now.
You know what? We'll always have time for your segment, which I will dub the Hansi scheme.
Yo, that's a dope name, man. It's a dope name. No, I'll try to be quick. I know other people might want to call in, so I'll try to be quick as possible. But listen, I saw NXT. I thought overall, like for a match standpoint, I thought that was like the better in-ring show. But I mean, but AEW, man, holy! I mean, it wasn't like the greatest like show ever created, but it just a new excitement with like a new production and just hearing Tony Schiavone. Like Tony Schiavone sounded so much more motivated than he did his last 2 years of WCW. And it was just surreal hearing his voice back on a national broadcast again. And I really dug a lot of the matches. I don't know what to make of this new stable that's being created. I don't know what's going to be called, but I don't know. Like, listen, if you told me on paper that Jack Swagger was coming back, it wouldn't really interest me in the sense because like I'm a fan of Jack Swagger. I thought he was underrated, but I gotta give the guy credit though. When he showed up, everyone in the crowd, they chanted for the guy, and it felt like a big deal, even though I wouldn't really count that as like a big surprise. But I don't know. But overall, man, I just love the vibe that AEW gave and everything like that. But my question is, do you guys think that with NXT and AEW, do you think like that now like to like up like to make people more interested if the ratings aren't to par with AEW? Do you foresee more like main roster guys that are supposed to be like bigger coming to NXT in the next coming weeks? Because that's what I'm worried about. They're gonna blow their stack on going, okay, if our ratings aren't good, then we're gonna be putting on we're gonna send more people back that like might not be able, like you might not need it. You know what I mean?
I definitely think that they will be reactionary. If we're talking middle of November and they are significantly behind, I think there will be that natural reaction to spice up the NXT roster by putting bigger names on it. I would say if all things are equal, I wouldn't want to overload NXT with talent going down because I don't think you want to have like one guy is great. I think it stands out. That person is special. And if you were to overload the roster, I think that it takes away from the difference that you need to be able to cultivate with NXT being a different product and not just overloaded with guys. So it's a careful balance, but viewership figures are certainly going to dictate that, I imagine, because I can't see them just standing pat and not doing anything after, if it's 6 to 7 weeks where they are behind.
All right. Well, listen. Thanks for answering my question, and guys, congratulations on the big turnout for your Patreon and all that. I'm looking forward to the SmackDown review. I can't wait for that to happen, man. It's a crazy week in wrestling, and I want to thank you guys for keeping up your usual work rate and facilitating everybody to get the best value in their Patreon and all that. So don't feel bad about making some of these shows exclusive for Patreon, because you guys have went above and beyond to facilitate, and I can't thank you guys enough.
Director of Communications, Hansi, thank you so much as always for the call.
I'm gonna save this clip for anytime somebody asks me about that. So thank you, Hansi.
Hey, one question I had on the flip side of Hansi's question was coming out of NXT show on Wednesday.
Yeah.
If you were looking at potential candidates to go up, I think the top ones are Matt Riddle and the Street Profits. Do you see either, both, or neither getting drafted?
Honestly, what's kind of confused me was that I would assume the Street Profits, especially even after the result, but the fact that they gave him such a big introduction with the Wale entrance.
I thought that entrance was so awesome.
It was awesome.
And everyone with the cups and that was an awesome entrance.
It almost makes me wonder if they'll be staying because they're putting those resources to the Street Profits. Why build them up so much if they're just going to leave, right? I mean, I know it's all WWE anyway, but they gave nothing to the Undisputed Era. But at the same time, where are the Street Profits going to go after this? So I could see them moving up. I thought for sure Shayna might have been a real candidate.
That was the most surprising outcome of the night. I thought there was a good shot Candice was winning because ultimately I do see Shayna going to the main roster. Just a question of when.
I think Shayna's going to stay put for a little while. I think Riddle's going to stay put too.
You do?
I do.
Yeah, it was a great match that he had. I mean, I just look at Matt Riddle, that is obviously someone that no one needs to tell you that that would be someone Paul Heyman would be all
For
over.
sure,
So, and the Street Profits as well. Clearly, their positioning on Raw is evident of that. So, I mean, those would have been the candidates coming out that you would look at, and we'll see if any of them end up getting drafted over the next week and a half.
We go back to the phone lines, a lot of calls, so please, everybody, try to keep your questions and comments as short as possible, at least for this particular episode. But caller, you're on the line. What's up? Hello, caller.
Wait, John, how you doing?
Very well. Who is this?
This is Bill of Bill and Alex from Orlando.
Whoa, Bill himself, Mr.
Bill.
Our own sign guy.
Our sign guy. Thank you so much to you and Alex for always representing us anytime WWE goes to Florida. Appreciate it.
We enjoy it. A couple of thoughts on the shows last night. Number one, I kind of almost had to rewire my brain to realize that NXT is part of the big corporation and AEW is more of the up-and-comer. The fact that AEW was in a big arena setting and NXT was in the small Full Sail setting. Mm-hmm. I was pleasantly surprised with Excalibur. I knew nothing about him. I haven't watched any of their programming before. I really enjoyed him on commentary. I think JR is fine, but I'm really to the point where I think he's past his prime and it's time to get some new younger blood in there. And then the last thing, I don't know if you guys felt like it or anybody else felt like it, but I felt that a lot of the camera and production angles and so forth were done by former Nitro camera people and production people. It really, to me, took me back 20 years to feel like I was watching a Nitro and how they shot it and where some of the boom angles were and things like that. And I appreciate all you guys do, and we love all your podcasts, and I'll hang up and listen to your comments, to my comments, and have a great day.
Thank you very,
Thanks very much, Bill. We appreciate it. What did you think about the production specifically of AEW?
You know, like it's interesting that Bill mentions that because is Keith Mitchell not from the WCW Nitro? Yeah, of course. So I mean, I think that the fingerprints were there. I mean, but I would say, to me, nothing necessarily stood out, where I said, oh, this looks like Nitro, or even this looks like Impact, despite much of this crew being from those shows. I just felt like it was like a modern TV show that was up to broadcast standard, I just want to add that one of the we're getting a bunch of calls here, and it just lists like who is calling here. And one of them is Tony K.
So
I know
Tony K wants to call in. We'll open up some time. We'll keep him on the air till the viewership.
We have a lot of questions for you, but we got another caller on the line right now. What are your thoughts? And first of all, what's your name?
Hi, Jonathan from Richmond, Virginia. I was at the show last night.
Oh, that is awesome, Jonathan. Great to hear new callers as well as the old ones as well. But Jonathan, tell us about the live experience at the Capital One Center.
I have been going to live wrestling shows since 1998, right in the middle of, the big Monday Night Wars, and this felt like that again. Like the energy from the crowd that was outside waiting, inside the building, the heat throughout the entire show, it felt like that again.
What kind of sense did you get leaving the building, Jonathan? Like, was there like a palpable buzz? Like this is, like it achieved what it set out to do, at least among those that were there live?
Oh, absolutely. The enthusiasm was through the roof. Even though by the end of the show, everybody felt a little tired because we'd been there for a while, but everybody seemed very optimistic about where the show would be going for the following weeks. There was a lot of buzz over the final angle involving Jericho and Hagar and all them guys. It was just very positive overall. I didn't hear anybody with any negative things to say about the show when we were leaving.
Now, you mentioned kind of people being a little bit tired at the end of it. I'm curious if they did not tack on, like typically, you sometimes will see at WWE shows, like they'll do maybe one dark match after Raw. For SmackDown, it's a different case with 205 Live. Did you think it helped the live presentation to have those dark matches after the closing match, or did you think it was too much?
Honestly, I think it would have been more advantageous for them to maybe start the show a little bit earlier and put on more dark matches before the show. And then after TV stops, do, one big dark match to end the show to send the crowd home happy and not so tired, especially when you're driving back from DC down to Richmond. It's like a 2-hour drive anyway, plus traffic. And yeah, we were ready to go by the end of that Luchasaurus match.
Would you do that trip again? Like if AEW comes back in a couple months?
100%. We're actually going to do it for Full Gear in Baltimore, which is another hour and a half from DC. But hey, it's live entertainment. That's really good.
Well, that's a big part of the appeal of AEW right now is people that are willing to travel to these shows, which I don't know how many people are necessarily making, big road trips out of a Raw or a SmackDown right now. So that's something very notable. But thanks a lot for the live report, Jonathan. Great to hear from you.
One more thing real quick. Did you happen to see, who's it? Bryce Remsburg's tweet before the show?
No, I did not. What did he say?
He put 2 pictures up. It was one picture was of him up in the bleeds for Starrcade 97, and the other one was he was saying like, this was my view in 97, this is my view now, and it was a picture of him inside the ring.
Oh wow.
Cool.
Well, I wish Bryce Remsburg had been I wish Bryce Remsburg was the referee for Hogan and Sting at Starrcade 97. I'm sure he wouldn't have messed up the count like Nick Patrick.
I wish that match was the Invisible Man versus the Invisible Stan.
The Invisible referee.
That was just fantastic. But a fun fact about the 2 shows, from the 97 show and the show last night, there are still 2 guys that were at both shows. First one being Tony Schiavone on commentary. Second.
Oh. Sorry, you had a dropout just as you were.
Who was the second one? Schiavone and who?
Dean Malenko.
Dean Malenko. That's right. Because Jericho wasn't on that show, right? He was just one of the guys in the crowd, I think.
That's correct. On Starrcade, Dean Malenko faced Eddie Guerrero for the Cruiserweight title.
Right. Well, thank you very much, Jonathan. We appreciate it very much.
Thanks for the call. Appreciate
it,
guys, and all your work.
Thank you. Hope to hear from you again. Okay, let's keep going with the calls. And apologize everybody if you can't get through. We only have one line, but please keep calling in. We're going to try to take as many of these calls as we can before the number comes out. So our next caller, you're on the line. What's your name?
Hey guys, how are you? It's Savon from New Jersey.
Hey, how are you doing?
Sorry, did you say what?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, it was probably a name that you guys haven't heard. It's actually pronounced Savon.
Savon. Okay, got it.
Yeah. It's not something you hear every day. Yeah, I know. Just an absolute pleasure to talk to both of you. I really enjoy both of your guys' your work on both your free and your Patreon. I'm a new member of Patreon, and
thank you.
Just a little nervous talking.
No, not at all. What did you watch on Wednesday night?
I actually ended up watching AEW just from the hype and everything, and I apologize. My daughter's in the background, though, Lordy.
That's okay. Did you watch any of AEW?
Yeah. I watched a little bit of AEW, and I try to do the back and forth to NXT. I was actually I had a question for you guys. Does anybody know what AEW did as far as during the commercials? If they turn the lights down or anything like that, or if they went to like a chin lock extravaganza like the WWE usually does, so they come back on TV.
Yeah. Interesting because Neil actually, who might be calling in a little bit later, he says he watched on the AEW Plus where they don't go to commercial breaks, and I believe at least like during the matches, you had a lot of interaction between Jericho and the crowd, and this is where the hot dog incident happened. Maybe we'll hear a bit more from other fans who might have watched that live feed or actually attended the show live. As far as we know, did they like go dark or anything like that? I'm unaware.
I've got to imagine like just with the way AEW Plus is set up that I'm imagining like they're just gonna run through and like I really don't understand like the WWE mentality of just we stop during the break. It's like I understand you're not going to do something crazy during the commercial break, but I think it's also like your live experience in Toronto way was like it's a negative to that live crowd, and it's going to affect when you come back from break.
Roman Reigns versus Buddy Murphy. Like I saw that thing live, and I was like, I thought it was kind of boring. And then I go home, and everybody's raving about it. And I watched it on TV, and it was a very different experience, taking out like 3 minutes of chin lock out of that match. So I'm really curious to know as well. But thank you so much for your call.
And thank you very much for supporting the site.
Absolute pleasure to talk to both of you. Keep up the great work, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Savon. Okay, we're going to our next call, and I think we have him on the line. Tony Kaye, everybody.
Tony Kaye is joining us after a long build-up here.
Tony Kaye, congratulations on your on the debut.
Thanks, lads. It took a lot of hard work, but I really think it came off well. Thanks so very much. No, unfortunately, I have maybe fortunately, a different wrestling surname. It's Kane. But,
Tony Kane.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Perfect.
I know. So,
We'll have our
my-
post AEW scrum with exclusive with Tony
Yeah.
Kane after every.
Put that in the title.
Dynamite.
Tony Kaye joins us on the Café Hangout. Exclusive interview. Well, Tony, what did you check out on Wednesday night?
So I watched NXT. I watched it today, but I just thought kind of, I don't know, a funny note on it. So I was in work and I was watching it like on my phone, just some clips before I could get home. And some friends in work, they were kind of lapsed fans, and they were aware, mainly through me talking about it, that there was a new exciting wrestling show coming out. And when they thought, oh, well, that must be the new exciting thing because it looks so different to, you know, WWE main roster stuff. And then when I showed them a clip of Dynamite, they thought, well, oh, shit, that looks like the wrestling that I'm used to seeing. And, you know, if you're kind of promoting yourself as this new alternative, but you look kind of so generic and what people are used to, I just thought that was a bit of a funny disconnect that, you know, it's meant to be a new and exciting thing, yet NXT, which we've had for a number of years, visually is more arresting, and it's something that people might go, oh, well, this is something that might be a bit different. I thought that was a kind of funny note for a lapsed fan to see that.
Right. You know, is there perhaps, you know, an interesting balance between making sure that you look different while still trying to maintain, you know, I think people's perceptions of what a major league wrestling product should look like?
Yeah, sure. I think there is an element of that, but through, you know, it's been so much put out that AEW is going to be different, brand new, different, exciting wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
But I felt the presentation was very generic. And I know what you're saying, like you need to have broadcastable quality, but from the outside, a lapsed fan looking in, NXT was the one who was like, oh shit, that does look kind of more exciting, like dark in the crowd and such. I know AEW probably want to have their crowd, you know, showing off, look how many people we got into this arena. But if you want to, you know, promote yourself as a new, different thing, I thought visually, if I hadn't have known anything about it and I was just to see these two products for the first time, I would think, oh, NXT, that's the new exciting one, especially when I'm hearing voices from 20 years ago on AEW.
Right. For that reason, you know, you seem to be a fan of the Full Sail look. Would you recommend that NXT stays in that venue?
I think so. I think, like, as opposed to running the risk of, you know, it's cool to be booking these massive venues, but if you could, you know, get a smaller crowd, like just a ravenous crowd, smaller, closer to the action, I think that lends itself well to a real buzz in the arena. From my perspective, watching it on TV, you know, I'm gonna still watch both shows, and of course listen to Up Next and review Rewind the Dynamite. But you know,
Sounds
I
so weird
prefer to look to
hearing
NXT.
it from somebody else say the name. But yes,
Yeah.
Rewind to Dynamite, the
Cool.
name of our new show. Cool. Thank you
Well,
very
come here. Subject. Oh, cool. Sorry. Take it easy, guys. Thanks very much for all you do.
Thank you very much, Tony. Hope to hear from you every single week on the
Tony
Café.
Kaye, everybody.
Appreciate it. We got a lot of calls to get to, so
boy.
let's keep going here. I think we got Daniel Perry. Daniel, nice to finally talk to you. What's up?
Yeah, you too, man. Yeah, no, I just think, to be honest, like Tony's point just then on the difference on the shows, particularly how NXT kind of came across in comparison. I think looking at kind of, hey, you know, AEW seems to be really trying to kind of compete with that kind of main roster show. And, you know, to me, I think ever since kind of All In last year, I just feel like, you know, there's so much momentum that's I just lost a lot of interest, to be quite honest, in AEW. And I think in particular, one of the things that kind of, you know, really kind of stood out to me last night was just like, you know, looking at how NXT is presenting itself and how it's kind of always presented itself. It's always presented itself as kind of like an alternative to the indie. You know, it's kind of, it was always battling with like Ring of Honor. It was always battling with that kind of size of, you know, kind of audience. And that's kind of what they were trying to do, the WWE version of. And I think to me, it's like, I found NXT way more interesting because again, not only is it kind of presenting a new kind of overall feel, but I think in comparison to AEW, where you've got, you know, your Chris Jericho's and you've got your, you know, Tony Schiavone's, which is all great and I think fits a certain, you know, thing. NXT is the one for me where it is producing new talent. It is producing young talent. It is trying out new commentators, new ways of doing things, new matchups, and new kind of and still keeping the kind of fundamentals that work. And I think that's the point of difference to me now, is kind of when we're doing this comparison to, if anything, it's the days are kind of slightly wrong. That Dynamite should really be focusing with where it is with Raw and where it is with SmackDown, and that as a comparison, because to me, I thought the AEW, it was great to see those guys on TV, and it's great to see AEW doing things, but to me, I thought NXT was a far better show, and keeps me interested in wanting to tune in next week and wanting to kind of keep on. So.
Yeah, no, all great points. I think that it's like, I think if you want to come out and talk positively about either show, like, to me, they were two very good shows on Wednesday night. And if you prefer one over the other, I don't think there's a counter argument to it. It's ultimately going to be what appealed to the larger number of people, and over the long term has the most sustainability among those people.
I think it's also sorry, please go ahead.
No, I was just, the only thing I was going to quickly update you guys on, just because I heard the thing at the top, was AEW is still not on in the UK right now, by the way. So we're up to 2 hours late on that kind of ITV Hub thing, and I don't even want to start on that whole mess of a UK deal. I'll save that for a call next week. But sorry, Wwe, what were you going to say?
No, I was just going to say, I think it's really interesting that we're even having this discussion right now. I think because for the longest time the narrative was AEW versus main roster WWE, but WWE basically using their very much I would say an indie brand to go up against AEW, to me is a much more interesting competition, and I think way more advantageous for WWE, way more difficult of a task for AEW, because so many of the things that they criticize about the main roster, NXT has really already solved. So, to me, this is a much more fair fight and a much more competitive fight for AEW than if they were to simply compare themselves against Raw.
Thanks a lot for the call, Daniel. Hope to hear from you in the coming weeks.
Looking forward to hearing from Brandon.
Yes.
That's all I'm here for.
We will see. We will see if he survived Wednesday night. But it's also like an interesting strategy as well, the fact that by putting NXT against AEW, that's all the discussion. It's AEW versus NXT, and we're not talking about AEW. Like, if they were to come out and they do 2 million viewers one week, or they're threatening what a Raw could do going against Monday Night Football, I think that changes the discussion a lot, because no one is talking about AEW in terms of what it is going to do in comparison to a Raw or SmackDown. It is tonight, even best case scenario today, it's looking at, well, they beat NXT, which is not their top tier brand.
Right. Yeah. Again, the first week numbers, we could probably throw them out the window, right? Like it really matters, like what 3 and 4 might.
It's a good indication to see how many fans are out there that are split amongst these two groups,
right?
And we're like, I'm just as interested in the NXT number of what have they retained from the last 2 weeks. Are they going to see a large chunk of that, or is there going to be a relative maintenance of those numbers, and this whole audience out of left field is checking out AEW? We should know that in about 20 minutes.
We go back to the phone lines now. We still have a lot of time on the Hangout, so if you can't get in, please keep trying. But caller, you're on the line. What's up?
They giving out free croissants at this cafe? I've never seen it so popular.
He has been located.
MJ from NJ, welcome. Welcome back. Nice to hear you.
Well, it's good to be here. I'm glad I can get a table, and thanks for taking my call. Saw the forum had a lot of first-time, long-time lurkers, and that was awesome to see last night.
Record number of
so
feedback.
Congrats to Post Wrestling on a very successful Wednesday night.
Yes, and thank you to and congrats to Braden Davey as well, representing Up Next here with my shirt. Having a great turnout for their show as well.
So I'll try to be quick here and succinct with my points. First off, WWE is a multi-billion-dollar media content company, and their shows feel that way. AEW, just a wrestling company, used to be a T-shirt company. I give them a lot of credit for what they put on last night. The show looked awesome. Here's some comments on like kind of the production issues and stuff, but like they're not in the business of producing this kind of television for 20 plus years. So for the first go around, I thought it was pretty solid. I don't know.
I disagree, MJ. I watched those shows.
I mean, there's plenty to nitpick. Not too much I'll criticize because it is what it is, and it'll only get better with time, I would have to think.
Like, you can nitpick some of the production, but watching those shows back to back, to me, the more major league feel was a clear AEW advantage for me. I thought that felt like such a bigger show than the NXT show in the environment that they were in, and I think that played a big difference, I thought.
It'll be interesting when we get to like week 4 or 5 when there's not the same rabbit. I mean, this sold out so early. I think some of the more recent ticket sales have been a little less, and we'll see what that looks like when it's not in a 15,000 person arena. There's smaller venues. But still, yeah, from a production standpoint, I think it was a great first effort. I thought it was very telling that WWE has what I call groupthink. And you hear Triple H talk on his media calls this week about how Vince is hands-off and all this, but it's still groupthink. And for them to come out last night and feel that their very first night head-to-head, they had to bring back Finn Balor, a main roster star, a heavily pushed main roster star. They had to, on top of that, bring back Ciampa. It just felt like we're going to throw everything at the wall to get you to keep your eyes on our product. But that's not sustainable. And to me, that was so indicative of where WWE has been over the last 5 years with, we're going to do whatever we can to get your eyeballs today, even if it's not a sustainable product, and it may hurt us in the long run because we're not going to get Finn Balor every week. Are we now going to expect other people to show up? And if that becomes the case, what are you now saying about your main rosters? And it's just very convoluted. I was curious about your thoughts on what they did last night to stand out or to make their show feel really important.
Yeah, I mean, for the first week out, I didn't mind it. Like, I think you want to have some of those kind of big news items coming out of it, and it is kind of pulling you back to see, okay, where is Finn Balor going to be utilized? Where is Ciampa ultimately going to lead up to this eventual match with Adam Cole? So I think it's good to have those things, but you're right. It's a trap you can fall into if you feel that you are at the mercy every week of having to produce a surprise or do that, because then it loses its effectiveness.
The argument, though, is that, they needed to do this to mitigate all the curiosity that AEW has for this first week. Now, week 2 and week 3 and week 4, AEW Dynamite might not have that initial curiosity, and NXT won't have to throw as much into, their own show to counter it. But you can argue that doing everything that they did, a commercial-free 30 minutes, 3 title matches on one show, you can argue that they needed to do that to mitigate the potential embarrassment that they could have suffered without doing a big show.
Yeah, I guess I just wonder at what cost. Now if Kevin Owens loses on Friday, he's going to show up on NXT next week because they have to mitigate the second week of AEW after they had 1 million viewers. And then the week after that, they got to do something to mitigate the, AEW's now producing a solid, consistent number of 1 million viewers. So it just, where does it go? It's not, to me, they are so reactionary. And this is more of an indictment of where the company has been. We see this with the reunion shows. We need to pop a number to go up against Monday Night Football. Let's bring back Austin. It's like they're not doing anything to build something of long-term. It's long-term booking, right? Not just character storytelling, but long-term booking for your company, for your brand. What makes you different? What makes you stand apart? I thought that was pretty interesting. And the last thing I'll say, because the number's going to come out soon, and I'll let you guys get the new callers, if you will. If this number combined is somewhere between like 1.5 and 2 million, what a statement about the last, again, I'll say 5 years of WWE where they're losing viewers and they're doing 2.5 million to 3 million. But here you are, you're going to have almost 2 million people tune out on a Wednesday night for the spot monkeys and the indie guys that for years we heard nobody wanted to see. Turns out all you needed all this time was just to give them a spotlight. And I'm hoping the number's somewhere north of 2 million combined. So like that's both shows together. But we'll see, and I think that'll be really interesting and hear what the criticism is after this, because there will be some.
Thanks a lot for all those points, MJ. We really appreciate it.
See you good, guys.
All right. Well, the cafe is full, everybody. We are continuing to go here through a lot of calls. And, yes, it's going to be very interesting to see how much it's, as well, like promoting a lot of this stuff in advance, because like surprises are nice, but if you don't alert people ahead of time, it's sort of, you can't really capitalize on that curiosity.
Yeah, I agree. Let's try to cram in a few more before these numbers come out. We got a Neil from Northern Ireland. What's up?
Hello, guys. How are you? I just saw somebody in the chat room. Brandon D was accusing me of being Tony. He thought that.
You and Tony Kane are the same person?
Exactly. Yeah, I can confirm that we are not.
Hey Neil, what's going on with ITV Hub right now?
Oh God knows, John. I gave up.
It's not aired the show yet. Is that correct?
It's still not showing. But as Wwe already mentioned, I watched it live on the fight option.
Yes.
And to me, it's fairly good value, you know, but especially considering that there isn't any commercial interruptions. And it's interesting. It's an interesting experience watching it that way. It's just a completely long, raw feed, and occasionally they did. I left some feedback with you last night, which you got to among the mountain of feedback you got last night. But occasionally they went back to a ultra wide lens view of the arena, but mostly they were going through the matches, including with commentary on occasion.
Really?
You got to see we got to see things like that have been mentioned earlier on with Jericho grabbing the mic and saying, who the hell threw this wiener in the ring, and all this kind of stuff. So it was an interesting experience. I enjoyed it, and I think I may well stick with the fight option for that very reason, you know. And a very different experience from what you described, going to see SmackDown in Toronto where with 4-minute chin locks, etc. There was none of that. The matches, actually, there were some big spots, seemed to me, during the what would have been picture-in-picture, I guess, in the States, but you don't get that in Canada, and we don't get that for SmackDown here either. But that's all been mostly addressed, so I just wanted to say it's really great to be on the season premiere with so many new folks. We grew up thousands of miles apart, but we can all hang out at the same street corner of Pollock and Ting every week.
Right near
Dystopia and Agony, wherever.
We're in the same neighborhood, yeah.
But one small related point on the Raw feed is Raw, as in the uninterrupted feed of AEW, is that I don't see any reason why ITV4 couldn't have picked that up live, because they didn't have to run. Because of that, they don't have to run every ad break. They could run every other one or whatever. You know, if that's the reason they give. Also, just very quickly, I will run through a couple of points. Wonderful graphic way for the fall.
Oh, thank you so much.
No, you got such a talent for those things. It's brilliant.
Thank you for recognizing the handwritten portions.
Yes, you picked me up on that, or a picture. I'm laughing inwardly at the WWE statement about what happened last night. They clearly lost, and for them to talk about marathon, not a sprint, they behaved like it was a sprint. They sprinted onto TV when they only had an hour, while Suits was still on. They sprinted up to this week, stacking the card, limiting the ads, starting with the title match, having an overrun, all of that, and it feels like they still lost. Well, we'll see. We'll see very, very shortly, I guess.
Hey, last thing, Neil, I don't know if you mentioned this in your feedback, but when you're watching the commercial breaks of AEW on Fight, is there commentary, or is it just you're just watching the action?
Sometimes.
To be honest, it was difficult to tell on occasion when it was an ad, but there was definitely one or two occasions where JR said, we're going to a commercial break, but don't go anywhere. There's picture-in-picture.
Okay.
There was a small gap of silence, and then far too quickly for them to be back from commercial break. The commentary continued, so there was commentary on certainly on one or two of the commercial breaks. Cool. I also wanted to. I think it may have been brought up while I was waiting on the line. I think it's very interesting if the NXT and AEW ratings combined exceed what Raw gets. I actually think that would be a positive thing, a straw in the wind, at least for a potential of audience growth after some years of decline, you know?
Yeah.
And one final point, if I can, because I know I always do
why
this.
Not? Sure, why not? One last one. What's up?
And it's got nothing to do with anything. CM Punk has so many estranged friends on the roster that, you know, you remember that whole business with Corey on Twitter last year saying, you know, you've alienated all your friends, including all the ones who stood with you even when we weren't meant to, and all the rest of it. I think that's going to be a weird dynamic on that show if he's on there with Corey or with some of his old ROH buddies. You know, that's going to be a strange thing. I just thought I'd throw that in there for something different to say. But wonderful as always to talk to you, and keep up the good work, and it's all going brilliantly.
Thank you, Neil. Talk to you soon.
All right. While we don't have the viewership figures, Tony Maglio from The Wrap, who has been a guest on this show, does have a story up in which It is labeled TNT's All Elite Wrestling Dynamite debut buries USA Network's NXT in ratings. I'm just going to read from this here.
Saucy headline.
Going for the jugular. Pro Wrestling's Wednesday Night Wars officially started on cable television last night with the new weekly AEW wrestling show debuted to 1.4 million viewers, besting NXT that did 891,000 viewers. So they do have the overall viewership numbers. Dynamite more than doubled its competition in the key adults 18 to 49 demographic, scoring 878,000 viewers compared to NXT's 414,000 viewers in that demo. And okay, so there you go. 1.4 million to 891,000 and doubling them in the 18 to 49 demo.
Now, how does this compare to, well, first of all, the total is what?
That would be
2.2?
About that, yeah.
Which is comparable to what we get for Raw.
The combined audiences.
Yes, combined audiences.
Yes. So what this tells you is that, NXT got a chunk out of it. I mean, they did just over 1 million viewers last week, so they were down to 891, and there were a lot of new viewers here created for AEW.
How does this number compare to NXT's first week on USA?
Their first week, they did 1,179,000.
Right, okay.
Then they were down to 1,000,006 last week, 891 week 3.
So AEW did better than NXT's first week unopposed.
Yes, by a lot.
Wow. Well, what do you make of that?
I mean, it tells me that there was a ton of promotion for AEW, a lot of curiosity, and a lot more people than they would have. Like, this was not just simply siphoning off NXT's audience. Like, this was bringing a lot of their fan base to the dance.
So NXT's number is not bad. It's not a bad number at all, but maybe bad considering the show that they set up, and maybe bad considering the demographic itself.
I think it would tell you that even with their biggest show, they could not counter the premiere and the fan base, the fervor for AEW's debut. I would take being that down, especially amongst the demo that they are fighting over. I think that's a really significant win for AEW, more so than just the overall viewership.
Shall we go to a few more calls?
Yes, why not?
Let's go to our caller that's on the line right now. What's your name?
Yo, you guys, can you hear me?
Barely.
Barely hear you. Yeah, we hear a lot of wind or something.
Sorry, man. Yo, this is Dave. This is Dave from DC, man.
Hey, Dave. What's going on?
I'm driving through DC traffic, but I'm not David Koontz on Instagram, and I just wanted to show you guys some love. Or thank you.
You brought the shirt to our shirt to AEW yesterday. Thank you.
Oh wow, this is Dave.
I was wearing the Pollock Offsets Ting shirt.
We saw you on TV.
Yeah, I was on TV. Yeah, Moxley and Omega. They brawled right past me, and I was like, I gotta get this post T-shirt on network TV.
Our
so
face.
It was there for a second, but
half of John and half of my face made it onto the debut of AEW Dynamite, as well as our combined brain. So thank you so much. What did you think of the live show?
Man, it was really good. To be honest, I had a few too many drinks, so I'm gonna go back and watch it on TV because it's sort of a blur. But
cool. Short and sweet and to the point. I like that review.
Do you remember getting in the way of Kenny Omega as you got your face, like a beautiful shot, like you just completely photo worthy?
I saw it on YouTube. I was really lucky. I'm lucky I didn't get trampled because I had my back to those guys, and I definitely could have gotten caught up there. But yeah, it was crazy. I mean, it was just a great show. It's the most fun I've had at a wrestling show in a long time, and it was really interesting. I think piggybacking on what I heard some people talking about earlier, like just randomly had a group text thread with some of my high school buddies that we used to watch wrestling back in like the Attitude Era, and we used to all get together. And so one of my buddies that I hadn't seen in years just also happened to be there on the floor, like in another section, and he's a Laps fan for like 15, 20 years probably now. So I think like AEW is really drawing people back in that had fallen out of watching wrestling, and I think that's really good.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the phone call and appreciate the representation. So appreciate it. Hope we hear from you again. All right, I had to end that. Sorry, David, about ending that call a little bit short. We have a VIP in the cafe, everybody. Let's welcome everybody. Brother Nate Milton.
Oh my goodness.
Chiming in on the Wednesday Night Wars. Brother Nate, how are you doing?
What is going on, brothers? I hear it's the season of surprising debuts and surprising arrivals, so I wanted to get my piece in too.
Yes, please.
But first of all, you guys always doing great things. I'm glad to see the response to the shows last night and the renewed invigoration of the postmarks out there. I think this is going to be a good thing for everybody.
Yeah, I found out, Nate, I got some breaking news earlier this week as I was listening to one of my favorite podcasts that my 2-year-old has been signed to a developmental deal for a future podcast with young Simba.
Yes, I mean, when you got Max and young Simba together, it's like peanut butter and jelly.
Are you the talent agent? Are you going to be the one negotiating these deals?
I think I'll be more like classy Freddie Blassie. You know, I'll pass the torch to the two younger guys, but I'll still show up every now and then to give them a rousing speech before they do a show.
I felt after listening to Marcus. I mean, this is a guy who feels like he has felt parenthood. I felt like I need to send this guy some words of encouragement. Like he is going through the fight right now. It seems that it is it's always it's an adjustment. It's always it's a transition for our good friend Marcus.
He knows how like Wai Ting and I live our lives at these random hours of the night because he has to be up with his child.
Pretty much, we're all set.
Well, Nate, moving back onto the wrestling front, what? How did you watch on Wednesday night, and what did you watch?
I primarily watched AEW, but I would switch back and forth between that and NXT. And you got to give NXT credit because whoever was programming and timing out the show, they did a really good job to try to keep you from flipping back to TNT with the way they had broken down the segments. But overall, I feel like, and it's not an original thought, it's been said before, but NXT had the better wrestling. AEW, though, was by far the better television show. And it felt like a bigger deal. It felt like something you couldn't miss. And as good as NXT was, I don't know if they've got, that freshness that AEW has, but B, I don't know if they could put on a show like that, takeover quality show every single week before they burn out their roster.
I don't think it's possible, but at the same time, that curiosity for that AEW show isn't going to be there every single week either. No. Now coming out of this, and if these reports of these numbers are true, what do you see the reaction being from both companies?
We know what WWE's reaction is.
Well,
their
yes,
public reaction to this number, and I think it confirms exactly what we thought about that press release an hour or so ago.
Yeah, that's the time. That's like when your ex, gets married on Facebook, and you're like, "Oh, I am so happy for you too."
Yes.
I wish you nothing but the best. But I think the WWE certainly needs to be concerned. It's not this sky is falling type of thing because the biggest show of the week has yet to premiere, and that'll be, tomorrow night on Fox.
Absolutely. What is your prediction on that one? I think that's going to be just gigantic on Friday night, whatever number they pull. Like I'm looking at this one to be, I think like 3.5 million easy is my prediction.
Yeah, I think I definitely think 3 million, and like you said, maybe even 3.5 is certainly within reach. It's got a good buzz, man. And the promotion from the NFL, from Fox during the NFL shows on Sundays, it has worked, and so yeah, I think that's going to be a big deal. They've got a bunch of stars lined up for it. Brock and Kofi, that's going to be interesting to see how that match turns out. So yeah, I think that'll be the biggest show of the week by far. But if you're WWE looking at what AEW did, the question is, and I think it's something that we talked about when I was on the Café last time, guys, where did these people come from for AEW, and why haven't we been able to reach them? And so yeah, I think if you're AEW, you got to be thrilled. This is a good number. Now the question is, can you do it week to week? Obviously you might not be able to hit that height every week, but if you can be in the neighborhood and be respectable, that's a good sign for you and for TNT. As far as NXT goes, they might have shot their best shot last night, but that doesn't mean that, this is a lost battle. This is a lost quote-unquote war. They just have to do what they do. Run your race. Don't worry about the other guy, which is hard to say in this wrestling world where everything is so competitive and passive-aggressive. But the real winners are us, man. The real winners are the fans and people that follow this and people that cover this industry, because it's not what it was back in the 90s and the early 2000s, but it's the closest thing we've had since. And so
this has been the most fun.
I think it's yeah, that's exactly what I was gonna say. Wade, like switching back and forth between the channels, man, and getting on Twitter or getting on the forum and having debates and arguments over this stuff. it's fun, and it's something that's been missing for a while. Like maybe not since the early days of TNA, and even then, that was a far distant second to what AEW is now.
Well, the only positive thing that came out of the Raw Impact brief head-to-head on Monday nights was you and I joining forces at the end of it all.
that was the ultimate merger. I mean, besides the greatness of seeing Brian Knobbs and Jerry Saggs back on national TV, it was our union that was the biggest benefit from that.
Just throwing it back to a previous caller about some of like the fingerprints of a old WCW broadcast on TNT. Did you sense that? And what did you think about the balancing act of, certain levels of nostalgia mixed in with trying to present a fresh and new approach?
I don't mind it. I don't think those are two mutually exclusive ideas. In fact, I think if you ignored the history, it would have been a missed opportunity because, there are a lot of people, and I think Andrew mentioned it when you were talking to him, that were lapsed fans or were old WCW fans, and they were coming back because, this is primetime wrestling live on TNT. We got Tony Schiavone back. Jim Ross is in the building. And, you can play off of nostalgia, but you don't want your show to be this, Rolling Stones reunion tour. You want this to be something where we use Schiavone, we use TNT, we use Jim Ross, we use somebody like Arn Anderson to set up these new people. Like I think one of the biggest winners last night, in my opinion, was Rio, who I don't think a lot of people really knew going into the show, but coming out of the show, you'd have to say she's one of the 5 biggest moments of the night with her beating Nyla Rose. So you can use nostalgia as a means to an end to, not only bring in some of the old folks that used to watch WCW, but you can also use it as a way to say, we're going to honor and respect this tradition of WCW, which has been kind of dragged through the mud if you listen to WWE revisionist history, but we're also going to do our own thing. We're also going to do something new, so we want you to come along for the ride.
Last question, Nate. The official numbers, 1,409,000 for AEW, 891 for NXT. What does NXT do differently next week, if anything?
And those are, again, I can't say enough that those are great numbers because I remember when we talked, like I was like, if they can tiptoe up to 1 million, that'll be a win. And so for them to exceed that,
among people 18 to 49, this was AEW was the number 2 program on cable behind the wild card game. Like that's phenomenal. Great. That is a phenomenal number. Like this has to be at the ceiling of expectations going into Wednesday night for AEW.
And so if I'm NXT, I think the biggest thing is not to overreact because that was obviously a great number by AEW, but it's also the curiosity factor. It's also, this is something that they've been promoting for months, and everybody knew that this was going to be the night where you only get one chance to make a first impression. And so everybody's going to be tuned into it. Will they hit that number again next week? It's possible, but they could also regress. And so if I'm NXT, we've got arguably the better talent roster. We've got, more experience in terms of producing the show. We got to figure out ways to make ourselves unique, make ourselves stand out. I don't think they're going to be able to compete with AEW from the standpoint of just the aesthetics. Because while I love like Full Sail and the environment there, it doesn't compare to what we saw last night in DC from AEW. Like that crowd was just so hot. And so I think if you're NXT, you want to focus on people like The Dream, focus on people like Undisputed Era, focus on people like Ciampa and play to your strengths, which is good wrestling. Play to your strengths, which is, this commentary team, which always gets rave reviews. You want to accentuate what you got. Maybe that means having somebody like Finn Balor show up more on the show, or the Street Profits, who I thought did a great job last night, becoming more of a regular part of your show. But I don't think you have to reinvent the wheel because at the end of the day, you're like what NXT did in terms of numbers is still really damn good. So just because they didn't get as many people watching as AEW did on the first night of their show, I don't think it's cause to overreact. And I would hope that they wouldn't overreact.
Nate, always great to check in with you. Thanks so much for joining us. Hope to hear you in the near future. And the countdown is on now. The next big launch after SmackDown, it's Impact on Access.
I am ready. I think that'll be the next big boom you'll see in Café viewership and subscriptions. And so, yeah, I'm just going to grab my bagel and sit over here in the corner with Tony Kaye and pick his brain a little bit and see what he thought about the show.
The great Nate Milton gracing us with his presence on the Café Hangout. Thank you so much, Nate. And that's going to bring an end to the Café Hangout. Any final thoughts, Wwe, just on the number? Once again, AEW doing 1,409,000 viewers, a 0.68 among people 18 to 49. NXT comes in at 891,000 viewers. In the 18 to 49 demo, a 0.32.
I think it tells you there are a lot of wrestling fans, 18 to 49, that probably, have a lot of curiosity, at least, about what else is out there as far as, professional wrestling content on broadcast television. Again, I feel like these are really good numbers and maybe tells you what the ceiling is on a very first night. But ultimately what matters is what lasts,
I'm probably going to write a lot more about these breakdowns later tonight. AEW smashed them in these demos. The most competitive one was 50 plus, and AEW still did. Actually, no, that's the
NXT one.
That's one demo where NXT did win. So
360,000 or 0.36 versus AEW's 0.34.
Yeah, so NXT did narrow them out in 50 plus. So that was
so that's the new trend, clearly, for double down on the 50 plus crowd, maybe.
Hey, listen, that's the audience that I do very well for WWE.
Yeah, and I do wonder how much of that might have to do with the fact that I would say because AEW, so much of its core fan base has been built online, how much of it has to do with perhaps people above 50 maybe not being as much on your message boards and listening to podcasts like this.
Well, it is worth noting, NXT did a 0.36 in the 50 plus. The last 2 weeks on USA. They did a 0.48 last week and a 0.47. So even 50 plus, right. they did lose viewership over the past 2 weeks. It's not like they were retaining in that demo the full amount. So yeah, there's a lot of numbers to look into. I look at this. This is a really big win for AEW. And now the next question is who comes back next week. I don't know if AEW is able to replicate this next week, but we shall see. This may get a ton of promotion and attention, the spotlight on AEW being the new kid in town on cable TV, and what kind of level they can equal or even surpass next week. I mean, that's going to be a fascinating question, and how NXT comes back week 2.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody who joined us for this inaugural edition of the Hangout with all of you guys in the cafe. And I really apologize for all of you who couldn't get on the show. This was the most calls by far we've ever had. So hopefully next week we can take a lot more phone calls.
Yeah, that will be the plan. Next week on the show as well, David Lagana is going to join the show as well. So we'll do a chat with him following the NWA's debut with their Power Show. That will be on Facebook and YouTube next week.
Wonderful. You hear the music, John?
I do.
What does that mean?
It's time to get on out of here.
Take care, everybody.
Goodbye.